The year is 1940. Europe stands on a knife's edge, its fate uncertain as the world watches the storm clouds gather. The Battle of Britain rages in the skies above, but the Royal Air Force holds firm, defying the Luftwaffe's relentless assault and giving hope to a besieged nation. In our history, Hitler turned east to the Soviet Union, launching Operation Barbarossa and opening a brutal new front. But what if, instead, he gambled on the Mediterranean? What if he chose a different path, one that could change the fate of nations? In this alternate timeline, Germany sets its sights on Britain's Mediterranean lifeline, threatening the empire's vital supply routes. The plan is audacious: seal the Mediterranean, turning it into a German lake, and starve Britain of the resources it desperately needs to survive. This bold approach, known as the Mediterranean strategy, calls for daring moves and calculated risks, challenging the status quo of the war. German forces would reinforce Italy and North Africa, pushing the British out of Egypt and threatening the Suez Canal, a critical artery for Allied logistics. The real prize, however, is the Rock of Gibraltar, a fortress guarding the gateway to the Mediterranean, perched on Spain's southern tip. To seize control, Germany must capture Gibraltar, which means negotiating with Spain's leader, Franco, and convincing him to join the Axis cause. Resources and troops once destined for Russia are now diverted south, reshaping the entire German war effort. German divisions march toward the Pyrenees, while the Luftwaffe readies itself for a new and unfamiliar theater of war. Around the globe, anxious crowds follow the news, holding their breath as the course of history is dramatically rewritten. The Eastern Front is postponed, its horrors delayed, as conflict erupts instead on the Iberian Peninsula and across the Mediterranean. This single decision shifts the world's focus from Moscow to Madrid, altering alliances and the very course of World War II. The Mediterranean, once a crossroads of empires, now becomes the new and volatile battleground for global supremacy. A different fire ignites across Europe, reshaping destinies and changing the world in ways no one could have foreseen. Gibraltar, a symbol of British power, stands as a silent sentinel at the gateway to the Mediterranean. It commands the narrow strait between Europe and Africa, controlling the vital passage for ships and navies alike. As long as Britain holds Gibraltar, Hitler's dream of a German-controlled Mediterranean remains out of reach, blocked by British guns and warships. Capturing it would trap the Royal Navy's Mediterranean fleet and open the Atlantic to German U-boats, threatening Allied supply lines. Hitler, obsessed with taking Gibraltar, sees it as a thorn in his side, a constant reminder of British defiance. To reach Gibraltar, Hitler needs to cross Spain, ruled by Franco, a fellow fascist but fiercely independent. Franco, however, is cautious, having just led Spain through a brutal and exhausting civil war that left the country scarred and wary of new conflict. When Hitler meets Franco, he expects easy cooperation, but is instead met with a long list of demands for food, fuel, and weapons, resources Germany can scarcely spare. Franco's refusal is a direct challenge to Hitler's authority, forcing the German leader to reconsider his plans. Hitler's original plan, Operation Felix, is scrapped, its hopes dashed by Spanish resistance. Instead, a new plan, Operation Isabella, is drawn up for a full-scale invasion of Spain, regardless of Franco's wishes. The goal is clear: occupy the entire Iberian Peninsula and seize Gibraltar by force. Hitler believes the Spanish army will collapse quickly, underestimating the will of the Spanish people. German forces prepare for invasion, confident in their ability to handle Spain's rugged terrain and expecting little resistance. In March 1941, German columns cross into Spain, launching a campaign that will test their strength and resolve. The invasion begins with overwhelming force, but Spain, battered yet unbroken, unites against Germany in a surge of national resistance. Franco calls the invasion a betrayal and declares a war of national survival, rallying his people to defend their homeland. The Spanish army, though poorly equipped, knows its rugged terrain intimately and begins a fierce guerrilla war, striking from the shadows. The swift victory Hitler planned turns into a bloody occupation, with German troops facing relentless resistance in city streets and mountain passes. Spain becomes a new front in the war, draining German resources, stretching their supply lines and sapping morale. The Spanish ulcer begins to bleed the strength of the Third Reich, turning Hitler's ambitions into a costly and endless struggle. Franco's refusal challenges Hitler's authority. Operation Isabella aims to occupy the Iberian Peninsula. Hitler expects a quick collapse of the Spanish army. In March 1941, German forces invade Spain. The invasion begins with overwhelming force. German tanks roll through mountain passes, paratroopers seize key positions. Hitler expects a swift victory, but Spain unites against Germany. Franco declares a war of national survival. The Spanish army, though poorly equipped, knows its terrain. They begin a fierce guerrilla war. The swift victory Hitler planned turns into a bloody occupation. Spain becomes a new front, draining German resources. The Spanish ulcer bleeds the strength of the Third Reich. The invasion unites Spain against Germany. Franco leads his nation against the powers that helped him win the Civil War. The brutal attack ignites national resistance. In London, the German invasion of Spain is both a shock and an unexpected opportunity for the Allies. The news sends ripples through the British war rooms as leaders scramble to respond to this dramatic turn of events. Churchill sees Spain fighting Germany as a chance not to be missed. He believes that supporting Spain could open a new front and stretch German resources even further. Britain quickly offers assistance to Franco's government, forming a strange and uneasy alliance. Diplomats and generals work side by side, setting aside old rivalries for the sake of survival. The first priority is clear: reinforce Gibraltar, now suddenly on the front line of a new conflict. Its strategic importance cannot be overstated. The Royal Navy races to the Rock, bringing elite troops, heavy equipment and vital supplies to bolster the defences. Gibraltar's defenders now support the Spanish resistance, forging new bonds in the heat of battle. Britain's support ties down German troops, creating what will soon be called the Spanish ulcer, a costly distraction for Hitler. British ships deliver weapons, ammunition and crucial intelligence to Spanish forces, strengthening their resolve. Special operations executive agents arrive to train Spanish guerrillas, teaching sabotage and hit-and-run tactics in the rugged countryside. The harsh, mountainous Spanish landscape becomes a death trap for German occupiers who struggle to adapt. The alliance is uneasy, with deep mistrust and suspicion on both sides, as old wounds are slow to heal. But the common enemy unites them, forging a partnership in the crucible of war. British and Spanish soldiers share trenches, hardships and a common goal: freedom from Nazi occupation. The Iberian Peninsula becomes a major new front in the war, drawing in men and resources from both sides. The alliance begins to turn the tide against Germany, pushing back the invaders step by step. The Spanish ulcer drains German resources, weakening their grip on Western Europe. The Mediterranean lifeline is more secure, allowing vital supplies to reach Allied forces across the region. The war's course is altered as Britain and Spain together reshape the fate of Europe. The German invasion of Spain becomes a brutal war of attrition. The Spanish army uses its terrain knowledge to fight a guerrilla war. German supply lines are vulnerable, constantly attacked by partisans. The war drains Germany's resources, with divisions stuck in Spain. The cost in men and material is enormous. The Luftwaffe struggles to locate guerrilla bands. The German army, trained for blitzkrieg, is unprepared for this war. Brutal tactics only strengthen Spanish resistance. The Spanish ulcer becomes a wound that won't heal. While Germany is stuck in Spain, the war elsewhere continues. The British strengthen their position in North Africa. Hitler's Mediterranean gamble turns into a strategic nightmare. The war in Spain creates a bizarre political landscape. Fascist Germany fights fascist Spain, shattering the illusion of unity. Mussolini, caught in the middle, tries to mediate but fails. The invasion exposes the Axis alliance's weakness. Propaganda struggles to explain the war to the German people. Franco is portrayed as a traitor, but the ideological confusion is clear. The war is about German power, not ideals. For the Allies, the conflict is a propaganda gift. It shows Hitler as an expansionist threat to everyone. The invasion solidifies the Allied coalition. The war is framed as a struggle for freedom against tyranny. The world turns upside down in the fight against a common evil. In the Kremlin, Stalin watches the events in Spain with interest. The German invasion gives Stalin more time to prepare for war. The delay is a gift, allowing nearly 2 extra years for preparation. The Soviet Union embarks on a massive military modernization. Factories produce new tanks, aircraft and weapons. The Red Army is reorganized and expanded. Stalin consolidates power, tightening his grip on Eastern Europe. He watches as Germany exhausts itself in Spain. His spies provide detailed reports on German weaknesses. Stalin waits for the perfect moment to strike. He plans to launch his own surprise attack. The delay strengthens the Soviet position. Stalin prepares to reverse history. The Soviet Union becomes a formidable force. The stage is set for a new conflict. In late autumn 1942, Stalin seizes the moment. The German army is stretched thin, with forces tied down in Spain. On a cold November morning, Stalin orders Operation Suvorov. The Soviet attack is a complete surprise. Millions of Soviet soldiers storm across the border. The Red Army attacks along a massive front. German and Axis forces are caught off guard. The front collapses in multiple places. New Soviet T-34 tanks prove devastating. Entire German armies are encircled and destroyed. The Luftwaffe is outnumbered and overwhelmed. The Red Army advances rapidly, pushing deep into Poland and Romania. The German war machine faces catastrophic defeat. The news of the Soviet invasion shocks Berlin. Hitler faces a major two-front war. Divisions are pulled from Spain and France, but it's too late. Germany is on the defensive, fighting for survival. The war's course is dramatically altered. The Soviet surprise attack changes the Second World War. Germany reels from the blow in the east and the Spanish ulcer in the west. The path to Allied victory looks different. No D-Day in Normandy. The main invasion is through Italy and the Balkans. The liberation of France comes later. The end of the war comes sooner, but the world is vastly different. The Soviet Union is in a stronger position. Stalin's influence is immense, with the Red Army advancing further into Europe. The post-war map is redrawn by Moscow. The Iron Curtain falls further west. The Cold War is more tense and dangerous. Hitler's decision to invade Spain proves his greatest mistake. The Spanish ulcer drains Germany's strength. A two-front war Germany cannot win. The world is forged in the fires of Spain, creating a darker future.